Excellent. So, hello and welcome to Limitless Talk with me, Katie. And today I'm joined by another fellow coach that I met last year on retreat in Spain. This is becoming a common theme of some guests from the retreat in Spain. But basically, I met Connor last year. Couldn't have told you who Connor was before beginning of April of last year. And I got to know Connor, the newly qualified coach. Connor, the guy that was finding his own way in life, if I can say it like that. You know, finding yourself of your journey with fitness and health and everything like that. And following on from that, I mean, Connor has just been someone that I've watched and I've got to watch very closely. Luckily, we're in the same coaching group. So I was really, really curious about his journey. I don't want to spoil it, Connor, because the floor is yours. But even up until last night, you know, being a coach, you are now the Peak Pursuit Project coach from that. I made sure I got that right earlier on. And the one thing in that video that described how I've learned about you and the journey you've been through was gone from Mackey's, McDonald's, overweight and therapy to coach, athlete and entrepreneur. And I wanted to follow that up with, and all of that what you've described, who is Connor amongst all of that?
Good. That's a good starting point. Connor is just a really high energy person. I'm very much a people person, always have been. Even growing up, I was always just like my mom always jokes about when we would like go out to like pubs and that. When I was like a kid, I would just like go up to like random groups of people and just like talk to them, like just who I am. I'm just always been really like a people person. I don't get anxious in social situations. I don't really get nerves and that type of thing. And that was always sort of like my one sort of like thing that I knew I had, like through all the years of like unconfident in my, like not being confident in my body and like, you know, my mind and who I was as a person. I always knew that I had like, you know, social skills. And when the decision came, when I out of nowhere sort of decided to become a coach, I was like, I knew that was like it was like the one thing that I had. Like I didn't have I wasn't coming from a background of like having been in the gym for years and years and years. I was very much still, I'm still going through a journey now, but especially when I qualified as a coach, I was still very much had a lot of, you know, my old self in me. And the one thing that I've always had is just the ability to just speak to people and just make conversation. So I'd say that's probably the best way to describe me, is the type of person that is impossible to not have a conversation with.
I'm obviously going to nod because I know that. And I loved how you said that about yourself and the journey. And one thing that I did when I was kind of having a nosy, because obviously I know the Connor from 2024 onwards, but I didn't know the Connor in 2023 or even before that, in ways in which I've gotten to learn. And one of your posts had some words and it said, 20 years I spent telling myself I'd be nothing but average. And I thought to myself, and I was like, I'm very curious about what changed. Was it a light bulb moment? Was it a massive turning point in life? Was it a specific thing? Or was it just a kind of, let's try something different?
Yeah, I think, so I say this to my clients all the time, is that I think that when you're in your 20s, I don't think people put enough of a focus on sort of like looking back at their formative years. Like your teenage years are pretty much like the crux, like they are what make you who you are when you begin your 20s. And it's something that people don't really get. Like people, you know, think that they're a type of person in school, and then as soon as they get into their 20s, they just automatically change. It's like unless you make the change yourself, you're not gonna change. And for me, I think it was almost a case of like, you know, in school I was like, my school was like fine. I wasn't like, you know, horribly barely like had little issues, but never anything major. Like I just sort of like got by. I was always like, you know, the class clown, that type of thing. That much was obvious. But with me, like, you know, I had friends. Like I was never like, you know, like socially secluded in school. But for me, I was always very much in that mindset of like what you do when you're a teenager in school, is that you put certain friends and certain people in your school on like pedestals. And like it's like a social ranking that you have in high school. It's like a thing that it's not even a thing that people say, but everybody knows like there is like a social ranking of like the popular people, the people that just sort of like they sort of just like go about, and then like, you know, you see for 6 years in school and you never actually say hello to them. I was sort of just like always looked at myself and they're like, you know, I was never like, I always had friends, I was always like, you know, doing stuff, but I was never like, you know, what I would consider as like, you know, one of like the, I don't know, a bit cliche, but like the cool kids or something like that. And then I think that just carried over into like my teenage years. And then obviously like I left school early. I went from school to McDonald's, worked there for like 5 years, and then I would see all my friends who'd obviously went to uni. They were all doing this, and I was very much just sort of like, right, well, I'm just here like just like flipping burgers and that. And to be fair, like McDonald's actually taught me a lot. It's actually, you know, it's a much better job than people really give it credit for. But for me, it just always made me feel like I would just always be stuck there. And you were saying about a light bulb moment. There probably wasn't like a moment. It was just more of a case of that I came out of lockdown and I was just a bit like a lot of people. I was just a bit like, oh well, I just feel a bit crap. So I just went into the gym. Literally, I'm very much a person who's will do stuff on the spot. So like the first ever time I walked into a gym, I came out of the gym that same day with a PT. As in I just
Oh
walked,
wow.
yeah, as in I just walked into the gym and I was just like literally looking at the machines, just obviously like I knew, you know, it's like when you can basically tell that somebody's in the gym for the first time. And PT came over to me, and that was James McCauley.
Oh
Uh,
yep, yep.
yeah, so he came over to me, and then I think I was like his seventh or eighth client, and then we just met, and then I think it was a case of that over the next few years. I think it's almost just like building a house. It was like I just began to actually build the blocks of like tell myself that I could actually do something because again, a lot of people say that like, you know, getting in shape and that shouldn't define who you are. But to me, it's like if you're somebody who takes care of their physical health and their fitness, it doesn't have to be, you know, crazy, like, you know, being an athlete and shit like that. If you're just somebody who takes a bit of care in their health and fitness, makes you a more confident version of yourself. It just does. And I think that that's just what happened over time. I just slowly built it up and built it up and built it up. And then about 2023, the gym that I was training at, the gym manager I got pally with, and he just asked me one day, like January 2023, he was like, you ever thought about being a coach? And I was like, no. And I'd never even crossed my mind. And then he was like, mate, you've got the social skills for it. And I was like, do I? And then again, when I thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, do you know what? I actually do. Because I was looking at other PTs in the gym and they were all a bit like, I was a bit like, I reckon I think I've got more chat than them. So, right, that's something that I've got over them. Right, okay. So then I just made the leap and done it. And I think for me is that now I don't look at it as a case of that. I don't look at myself in comparison to other people. I just am always comparing myself to who I was. And I can safely say that like I am a better version of me in every way than I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
I think that's a good way to describe it. There was a couple of things in there. The first one was when you were saying about you left school early. I could relate to that. Like I left school at 16 while everybody was still at school. Then everybody, you know, there was like different friendships or different connections with all those people when I was out the way of that by then. Because I
Yeah.
was at college learning business. I was sort of, I went to meetings with my dad in the funeral industry, and at 16, that's not really what your average 16-year-old does.
No.
And you felt as if, and I was more curious for myself, like when you were kind of back with that friend group, when you met up with them and things like that, and you hadn't been to uni, or you hadn't been around them maybe in that sort of way, did you feel like you were slightly more an outsider to them? Or you felt a little bit different in a sense?
Yeah, I think like I'm just one of those people that you hear it quite a lot, but when people are like they just never sort of like as in when I say I fit in with my friend group and then like I've got friends now that I still like I live with. My flatmate is my best mate from school. Like I've still got friends from school. But when I say I didn't feel like I fit in, it wasn't in a social sense of like I did fit in with my friends, but it was more in the sense of like just as a general standalone person, I was just a bit different. As in like the idea of like at university never really like to me, uni life looked great. As in like it did. Obviously, you did get a bit of FOMO like when you're seeing your friends, you know,
Oh, of
social.
course.
Of course you do. But to me,
Just
like
not the uni bit.
yeah, it just never really vibed with me. Like I was just very much more like I just want to go and make money. And even now, in the sense of like with McDonald's, like I was in a like basically I was in a spot where I left McDonald's. Sorry, I was working at McDonald's, you know, started the PT thing, and then I started working in a pub for a few months, and then got to a point where I first started the PT thing where my mum and everybody around me was like, right, just like stay at the pub for about 6-7 months until, you know, you've brought in like, you know, you're bringing like a stable income from the PT. And I just went, nah. So I just took out a loan from the bank, quit the pub job, So I sort of just went headfirst into the PT thing as with like 2 clients, and I was like, right, well, I'm going to make it work, and that's why it's a case of that. And again, I think it's like it's about who you surround yourself with. Like, you know, I had help with business wise from like day one. Obviously, that's how obviously I knew of you very, very initially, because we're in the same obviously business, whatever you want to call it, mentorship. But I had that from day one, so I always had that idea of like I could be doing more, I could be doing more, and I think that's always just stuck with me. And in regards to going back to like seeing school friends, I still, up until about a year ago, even in my early 20s, when I was catching up with them, I would still feel almost like I would almost still be like playing the character of who I was in school. And then got to a point like about a year and a half ago where I was like, why am I still acting like I'm like 17 years old? I'm just not. And now it's more of a case of that people can't, like, it's impossible to look at me the same as they did when they were in school, because, well, I ram it down their throat on Instagram every day what I do. So it's hard to see that, and then they see me, they just speak to you differently. And I think that's again another thing that people don't think about with fitness, is that I never got into the gym and fitness to, you know, for to be accepted that by other people. But there's no doubt that, and I know there probably shouldn't be this, but there is a fact of like, when somebody knows you are like taking like serious care into like your health and fitness, they do treat you with a bit of a different perspective. They do, like,
Oh yeah.
Like it shouldn't be a thing of like, fitness shouldn't be the thing that makes people respect you more. But at the end of the day, like it has as in like people speak to me differently now. It's like, you know, people that never in a million years would have ever got in contact with me after school will now just message me, like, you know, asking for advice and that. And it's just wild how like all of this domino effect of what fitness has done for me, not just as like, you know, the career, but just like for me as a person.
Yeah. When I was looking through your social media, there was one bit that you also talked about, find who gets you. And I think that's what was coming to mind. And I was like, I read it and I would feel like that has a place in there, because it is about finding who gets you. Like, you not playing the role of 17-year-old Connor, even up until 18 months ago, 2 years ago, me not playing the sort of class clown just because I thought that was the way that people would like me, or I was trying to go the other way, people trying to like me beyond the fact that, oh, your parents have got money, your parents have got a business, like, you must be loaded, you must be this. Like, no, find who gets you. Do you feel that, having gone through all of that, and I think it comes on to going on to talk about your journey, that you're in a place now where you get you, Support Network gets you more than anything, that fitness has given you that platform to get you and become who Connor has become?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I think as a coach I really do try, and honestly I would say that a big part of, like, I would say probably the last 12 months have been like the biggest shift that I went through as a human in regards to like the way that I view myself, because up until about a year ago I was obviously a coach, but I was still very much viewing myself in certain ways as like the version of Connor from like 3 years ago. And I think that, like, number one of the things that has obviously helped with that is obviously, like, you know, building a business. That obviously helps. But when it comes to coaching, I think that there's still this stereotype. And if there's one thing that I wish I could do, is that I wish if I almost had like a magic wand to be like, right, you can change one thing in every human's mind in the world, I would make them change their understanding of what coaching can actually be. Because there is still a thing of like, people think that coaching is like, you know, it's like giving them reps and calories. And to be fair, there is probably some coaches that actually that is all they do. But like, there is coaching and there's like actual real coaching. And I would say that our coach, obviously, you know, Christian, Alien, that they've probably been the single biggest instigators. If I'm being really honest, because it's,
I would
again,
agree.
yeah, because
Yeah,
I would
I
say
would
that's
agree.
like, I would say, and again for you, like, I know, like, you know, with your you know, journey in that as well. I think that you were saying about finding who gets you. I think it's been finding the people who get me, who like challenge you. When I say challenge you, it's not like, you know, like fucking challenging you to race and that, but it's like, you know, people that ask you the questions, like the awkward questions.
The hard ones.
Yeah, and I've like, you know, Christian said something to me like a few weeks ago, about a month ago, and it really, really resonated with me. He said that if you're not having awkward conversations with your clients like regularly, then you're not coaching. And I think that that's the one thing that, you know, your friends in school aren't gonna do that, because you've got friends that you went to school with that when you see them, even now, like, you know, there's certain ways that you probably wouldn't speak to school pals, because you're almost too comfortable with them.
Mm.
You need people that only know you as who you are now, so they can come in with a fresh perspective and, like I said, challenge you. I would say that now I understand who I am. I'm still always improving as a person, but I've got the confidence in myself now. Like, I'm making choices, I'm planning decisions, I'm planning, things in the 2025 that, like, I simply wouldn't have done 6 months ago. And my circle is smaller now, as in I don't really go out loads, but the people that I've got around me are like, it's all I really like. It's all I really need.
Yeah, that's the same as me, and I think, as I would say, it's like evolving and growing.
Yeah.
And it like comes from you getting comfortable with being who you are, of you finding you. It's helped all of that. And to someone that, again, I'll let you share your own story, but for someone like you who struggled, who experienced being overweight, you didn't like yourself, you didn't like your body, from your experience, from all of the learnings that you've had throughout the roller coaster journey that it's been, what could you say to someone as Connor, first of all, before I put your coach's hat back on you, what would you say to that person as Connor that just could give them something to, because you can say it better than what I ever could, because you've got that experience. Like, what could you say to that one person that might just help them or give them something?
I think the thing that people don't understand is that people just put too much. They're thinking too big. All right, it's almost like, if I put it into, again, this is not going into not putting my coach's hat on. This is just using like an analogy that Connor, would use as a human. Is that it's almost, if you imagine, like, try to lose some weight is almost like building a company. It's almost like you're looking at like looking to hire like CEOs and that before you've even actually decided on like a location. Isn't like, people just think way big as like, oh, I want to lose this much in 12 months. People just need to think about the really small things. Like, just think of one thing that you can do every day. And that's what people don't do, is like, just think of one thing that you can do consistently every day. And again, people think that has to be big, crazy things. It doesn't have to be. It's like, if you can go for a 10-minute walk every single day, if that's more than what you're doing right now, just do that. Just focus on that every day. Don't even think about tracking calories. Don't even think about going to the gym. Just focus on going on a walk. And then you've got to prove to yourself that you can do that every day for a month. And then you maybe add in, okay, I'm now going to start not even tracking calories. I'm now going to start maybe just making a little food diary of what I'm having, or even just taking note of what I'm having. And I think if I could say one thing to myself, like back in the day, is that if people try and lose weight thinking of it as a diet, then they're really, really going to hate the experience. I was lucky that I had like coaching around me all the time, which made it like an experience, which was like, it was obviously took time, but it was enjoyable. But so many people are just accepting that. People accept too early that they can't do it. And it's almost because they accept they can't do it that they don't accept the help. They almost get to this thing of like, and again, I was like that for a long time, because there was well before lockdown, I was already starting to, put on some weight, and I was just almost in a spot of like, there's literally like no helping me. There's literally no point in even getting help. And that's where a lot of people don't really understand. And I think if I could say one thing to somebody, it'd just be focus on a really, really small task every day. Just focus on a really, really small thing. Give yourself some confidence. And that's where it comes from. Is like, because to do one thing, you've got to be confident to do the smaller version of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. And what I was thinking about that, because I was going to ask you the question like of the previous version of yourself, but are you proud of that? Are you proud of who Connor was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because how it has helped you get to where you are, and how you can use that experience to be Coach Connor if I give you your hat back on to put on as coach?
As in, like, am I proud of the person I was 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It's like who I am is like a personality wise. I feel like I can safely say that from a whole life. I can say with my chest that I've always been somebody who's like just been like a nice person. Like, that's one, like, I would never say like, oh, 5 years ago I was just a horrible person, I just wasn't nice to people. Like, that was never me. It was more sort of like how I was to myself. Like, I was very much like I would put everybody in front of myself. And I would say that I'm not happy with how I was to myself 5 years ago, because I did not really take much care at all in what I ate. I didn't really care, and that was a big thing for me. And I know it's such a simple thing, but for me, it was like food has got such a. I know obviously it was like a running joke when obviously we went on the retreat, but food has always been like a just like I can't describe, like I know it sounds almost random, but I can't describe how much of a big part in my life that food has played, like probably more so than a lot of people, because for me, like I can still say now that I'm at 24 and 25 next Tuesday, and food is still probably the number one thing that probably brings me the most happiness, realistically. And for a long time, I didn't understand how that same level of happiness could be brought without it being like junk, basically. And I wish that I'd known that. I wish I'd known what I know now back then, because I would have saved myself many years of binge eating and like trying to, be restrictive of calories and then just eating loads at the weekend. Because when I say to people that, I say to people with confidence now that I will, hand on heart, all my life, tell you that I will get you out of a diet mindset, and I will get you appreciating food for what it can and should be. I can say it with confidence because I've done it more so than a lot of people. I've been at the low of the low, and I think that's one thing that I look back now and it's like I just wish that I'd had a healthier relationship with food, and I think that would have saved me a lot of pain for a lot of years.
I'm nodding my head here because I've got it from the opposite side. Like you ate, I didn't.
Yeah.
But it's exactly the same feelings. Like I often think back, like I do feel a sense of pride for the person that I was, but I also feel I don't hate the person I was, but I disliked the person I was. It was like a program that I watched where they were talking about, it was a parent to their child, and they said, I love you as my son, but I don't like you. And I thought, well, that's how I feel about a previous version of myself. And I always find it curious because you were the overeating, binging, that sort of thing, where I wasn't putting food anywhere near my mouth, but it was like the same sort of feelings of the pain. Like I could have saved so much time and energy of putting so much energy into that to maybe have achieved some of the things that I could have achieved it before, but you can't think like that.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes even harder. Like with your situation, it's because realistically, like, when you get somebody who like is overweight, you can just go like you can go proper Army General mode, and you can just be like, right, we're just going to put you on like a crazy calorie restriction, and you're just going to drop a lot of weight, and it's unethical, it's horrible, but it works. But like you can't do that with somebody who's like under eating. You can't just be like, right, we're just going to get you just eating like, I don't know, double your amount of food that you, or 3 times your amount of food you're eating right now. Because the difference is that, again, there's probably going to be people that argue this point, but for me is that when I was, at my heaviest, 21 stone, I could have probably just went on like a 30-day restriction, like barely ate every day, and it would have been horrible. I would have been moody, but I probably would have done it. If you're somebody who's under eating to the level that potentially you were, it's like you do that for like 7 days and you can be like fucking hospitalized. Like it's just different. And again, that's one thing that's why, again, like I always say that I'm never gonna help somebody with something that I've not been through. Like I've been stuck in diet mindset where like, with my weight loss, where I went so obsessed with it, where like I was maybe like teetering on the edge of like an eating disorder, but I've never been fully in it. I've never had like it like properly. So again, that's something that I can never really be like, oh yeah, I get you. I can understand being overly restrictive and probably being unhealthily restrictive, but I can never say that I've been through what you've been through, because it's a different level of it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's totally opposite end of the scale, but I could relate to so much that you said about it, like really, really curious about it. And I suppose, like obviously we were on that retreat, and as you said, yes, we had some banter and things like that. Like I don't think I seen you once without like a something type of nutritional food.
Yeah, that was
you were
the turning point.
Yeah, you were getting you were in the group that were doing the photo shoot not long after the retreat. And there was a few of you doing the photo shoot that were trying to track, that were trying to enjoy the retreat, and it was a big learning. I feel that I walked away having learned about like I hated tracking because I had to track to put weight on. And I remember walking up the hill. Remember we went to Malaga and we walked up to the top of the hill and we could see over to like the bull ring and stuff. And I said to Christian and Ailey, and I was like, I want to track calories. I was like, I want to make sure that I'm eating enough. And I was going through all that, whereas you guys were trying to learn not to overdo it and things like that.
Well, they were. I wasn't.
Well, they were. Yeah, you were enjoying yourself, like.
Yeah.
But it was so nice to see. But you were still learning at that stage. Really, what the difference was of how you were eating before to how you potentially eat now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was. It was. I felt that I learned through you learning about you, and I think that's like what you said before about who we surround ourselves with. Like who we're in environments with, like we're in the same coaching group, so there's calls weekly, there's, we're all in these different chats, so we're all learning and gaining from each other, and that's really important. Do you feel that you are the most in control of who you are now than ever?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah, it doesn't, that's like a, without a doubt, I would say that the retreat, it was a big turning point for me, because I think that like there's a real clear sort of like timeline of like I lost a lot of weight. Like the leanest I ever got was just prior to becoming a coach, and then I started coaching, and then I basically, from about the summer of 2023 through to about November time, I didn't have a coach, and I basically just like was spending all the time, as you've done yourself, like just all the time in the gym. And when you're doing 7-8 hours of you're talking to people, that you get tired, like your choices, you just get lazy. And then I'd got to the end of 2023 or November, and I hadn't got back to my peak heavy from a few years ago, but I'd put on some weight again. And I met Christian at one of the upgraded coach events, and it was just a case of like you said there a minute ago, is like surrounding yourself with the right people. I remember just watching him talk, and I was like, I like this guy. Like there's something,
yeah,
just something. He just spoke really, just that type of person that when you hear him speak, you're just like, oh, I'd like to hear a bit more. And what the retreat though, like fast forward a few months, what the retreat taught me was that by that point, I'd only been a coach for about 8 months, but I think that I'd spent so much time trying to build up myself as like the coach Connor, that it was almost like me, human Connor, with my own journey, I'd sort of just put on like the back burner, and almost like maybe subconsciously assumed that, oh, I'm a coach, I'll be fine now. And then I remember thinking, going to the retreat, I'll be fine with it, I'll be totally in control, and then I just wasn't. And I remember like Christian made a joke about it one day when we went into Malaga City Centre.
We were going in the car, that's right.
Yeah,
we were going in the car. Yeah, we were in the car. Yeah, because with the conversation before that, we can't mention that. That involved Ross. No, we just can't talk about that. No,
you can't talk about that. That's fucking story. Yeah, but I was just like, oh yeah, I reckon I've been eating a few thousand calories a day, and then Christian was like, you've probably been putting away about 6,000 calories, and then like, oh my god, and then again to show sort of like how. Like the photo shoot was good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I loved the photos, and it was a cool thing to sort of like see that before and after, because it was a lot of weight. For like the 3.5 weeks between the retreat and the photo shoot, I dropped something like 16 pounds, because I just basically came back from the retreat and I just went fully into like I ate like 1,500 calories a day for like 3 weeks. I didn't tell Christian and Ailey until until it got to like a week out, and Christian was like, hey mate, we're going to be updating your calories on the tracker. By the way, I've just seen that you're eating X amount. And I was just like, but that's just sort of like what I've been eating. And he was like, right. And then I remember we had a chat, and he was like, that's where we really need to work on. And then basically for the whole of the rest of last year, I had to learn what it was like to actually, for the first time ever, I actually learned what eating maintenance meant. And it was a big thing for me. Like Christian, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, but for about a solid 4 months, he was sending me like weekly voice notes, because I just wasn't understanding it, because I was eating like a bit more than what I thought. And then I was going into the next week being like, right, I'll need to pull it back a little bit, get back to normality this week. And he was like, right, but what is normality? And I was like, losing weight. He was like, but you're not trying to lose weight anymore. I just couldn't comprehend it in my head, because like by that point, like I'd been losing weight for 4 years. So it's like, it's a lot of built-in beliefs. It's a lot of like thing of like less calories is better. And it took me a lot of time, but like right now I'm like the most in control of food that I've ever been. I'm like, I'm in the I'm the fittest I've ever been. I'm like in my actual body, I'm like the healthiest I've ever been. And yeah, like I said, the food has been the crux of that. And I think at the end of the day, when it comes to, again, I can't again really make a case for your situation, but for my situation, when it comes to people with fat loss or weight loss, it sounds like such an obvious thing, but if people had their nutrition in order, 90% of people would not have the same issues. And again, that's easier said than done. That's not me saying like people should be better. I'm just saying like factually, if people didn't have the issues with nutrition, everything else will be easier, because people don't understand how much nutrition affects them mentally, like their mood. Like people don't associate like and understand that like there's a reason why you feel crap every Monday, and no, it's not because you've maybe stayed up a bit later. It's because you've just filled your body with junk at the weekend and it's affected your mind. And I think that's one thing that I really, really try and like help people understand, is that like you obviously at the event, obviously just a few weeks ago, that guy, the nutritionist guy, was obviously really good.
Mesmerizing.
Yeah. Really, really. But I think like obviously at a much lesser level than what his knowledge is, that's what I just try and like get people to understand, is like just try and have as much like whole foods as you can. Like that's it. Like you were asking earlier, that's actually probably what I would say. Is you asked me earlier what I would say to like a version of myself from 5 years ago. I would be like try like actually learn to like cook fresh and have fruit and vegetables with at least 2 of your meals. And it sounds like such a simple thing. People just don't do it.
No, we don't do it.
Like,
I never did that.
Neither did I. I like even up until like had a call with like Christian about 6 months ago, and he called me out because I was still having like 3 squares bars a day. I was having like 2 monsters a day. And yeah, I think that's one thing that I would say to my old self, is like just go online and just actually like just try recipes, just try stuff. Because I think for a long time, again, I put a thing on my head of that, oh, healthy food is boring, and for yourself it might have been like anything over a couple of 100 calories was like,
danger.
Yeah.
Danger.
And that's like I had a call yesterday. I had a girl sign up to coaching, and on the call we were talking about meals, and I was like, what would you do if I said to you right now that you were going to have a breakfast every day that was 500 calories? And she was like, oh my god, no, that's like mental. And I was like, right, well, that's mental. That's actually what your brain thinks. And that's what changed, because it's just your subconscious. It's like for a long time now, it's like I now have like 1,000 calories a meal, and I can actually be like, I enjoy that. I would have crapped my pants up until about a year ago, even with the sheer prospect of that, like because I didn't understand how my body worked.
Yeah, I was the same even up until like yesterday. My calorie intake has changed. I've gone to double sessions. I've like just a total different level again.
You've been at it recently with the.
I know, and I just like and I think what you said earlier about the type of questions that you ask, like I feel as if sometimes that I communicate too much, but as and Christian says it, he's like, no, you're just asking the right questions now because you're at that. So he's like, you've had to go through everything that you've been through to then get A, get B, get C, get D, and all of the rest of it. It's like you've had to actually go through that process. And what we're proving having this conversation is that we're just two humans, totally different experiences, but we're just proving as human beings you can be at a low, shitty point, but you can also change your life.
Yeah, I think that's what like people just that's obviously with like obviously the rebrand is obviously Peak Pursuit Project, is that I didn't just pick the name because it's got like a ring to it. I didn't actually like, which I was actually quite happy with. It's got a little ring to it. But the reason why I made it that was that because for me, realistically, since I started coaching, I've just always been like, when you start coaching, you'll know as well as I do that it's almost like you get generically drawn towards like fat loss. It's always going to be the most
popular.
Common. It's always going to be that. But I think when it comes to that, is people sort of always just go like, right, I'm just going to lose fat, and that's it. And again,
that's the answer.
Yeah, and I was like, but people will lose fat, and then they just get lost, and that's where again, having ready for anything and getting like challenged like that has really made me realize that fat loss, not even fat loss, but it could be for yourself. It could be like like putting on weight. That's just like, it's like one step of it. but it's almost like people are like, it's almost like everybody looks like one small magnifying glass, whereas now it's almost like I'm trying to get them to like take a few steps back and understand that it's almost like you're like your first stage of either putting on a bit of weight or losing your weight is not like your journey. It's just like step one, so your first checkpoint. And that's why I've made this, is because I do want to push people to be better. And obviously, running and obviously like your high rocks and all that's great, all right. But for me, it doesn't just have to be that, but it has to be something like with my clients now, like I don't want to just stop. I don't just want to stop with step one. As in, like, to me, I'm trying to help them understand that, okay, yeah, we've got you to the weight you want. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, right, we're now going to go next step. And they just don't comprehend it, because that's fine, but I've been there before. So it's my job to help them understand, like me saying to a client at the weekend who's just got her first 10K in May, and she's currently going through a big shift of like going from that diet mindset to fueling. And I say to her, you could literally finish this year with a 10K, a high rocks, and a half marathon. And she was just like, I thought we were just doing the 10K. And I was like, okay, but why would we stop at a 10K?
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's just that limited mindset. And I think like yourself, obviously, I remember like when you first said that you were, because I think you were like, were you not on the retreat when you decided to do this? Like you were like just in the middle of
I quit personal coaching and decided to not only go back full time in the funeral industry, but pursue coaching and well-being in the funeral industry. And it was the hardest decision ever.
Yeah.
But being around all you guys, and to be honest, I will be completely honest, hearing you guys talk about struggles with clients or difficulties and things like that, I was like, I don't want that. I was like, I want to be challenged with what I know, with what my experience. Like you coach people from that, you've got the experience and your background to coach. That's exactly how I feel about the funeral industry. And I knew that, and I still know that to get and be the funeral director that I am, I've got to do everything that I'm doing. I've got to do these hard challenges. I've got to step up in my own personal life to be professional Katie, that when a grieving family phones and says, my loved one has passed away, I am on it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you as a coach, you've got to be that for your clients because they need you for that, say that fat loss. But there's more than fat loss. There's more than just like going to your work, being a funeral director and coming home. There's much more to it. And it's just knowing that, because you then can be and step up in all those levels of your life.
Yeah. And I think like one of my clients, like that client there who I just mentioned there, so she's actually somebody who so she basically started with me in January, and it was like, it's honestly like I'm never gonna forget her, like, because her story in a few months has just been wild. But not just for like she's dropped some weight, it's been great, but basically she started with me in January. And I remember one day we were just chatting away because she came in for a session, and she was saying, yeah, I'd like to finish my PT stuff one day. And I was like, what do you mean finish it? She was like, I've actually done like all my level 2 and level 3. I just never sat the practical. And I was like, when? She was like a year and a half ago. And I was like, why did you not do it? And she was like, I didn't think that I didn't think I'd be good enough to pass the practical. I was like, did you try it? She's like, no, I never sat it. I was like, have you still got it valid? And she was like, I don't really know. And I was like, are you going to check it? She was like, no, probably not. I was like, and again, because I've been through this journey and I can now sort of like always look to like achieve the next thing, my brain couldn't comprehend that, of like, you've got this like this thing that people would like cut their hand off to have that opportunity. And you're just not doing it. So we've pushed her and pushed her and pushed her. And then like 3 weeks ago, she's like, right, I've decided to, I'm gonna sit it in. I've signed up for it. I'm gonna do it in June. And again, it's like, that's for me. That's what I like. I spoke to people about it. It's like, as a coach, you enjoy all your clients and you enjoy working with all of them, but you're always going to have a couple that are almost like the ones where you might actually help them change their career, like that one in a Blue Moon where you actually have a chance to like change their career. And she said to me, is like, her boyfriend messaged me last week on Instagram being like, oh, you've actually really helped, obviously say her name, but you've really helped her, and I've seen a massive change in her. And I was just like, wow. That's what I want, is like to actually be that person that can be like, because people coaches say all the time like, oh, we'll change your life, but like, to me, like, losing fat isn't going to change who you are. And that's the case of that. That's more of like a Kieran, obviously Ingram, obviously he done his rebrand thing, and his motto thing is it's not what, it's who. And it's really true. It's like, fat loss is like a what, is like high rocks is a what, putting on weight is a what, but you're not going to like sit back when you're like 70 and think, oh, I remember when I done a 10K or I went in a calorie deficit and stuck there for 6 weeks. You're going to think, I remember in my 20s when like I just became this like I'm gonna look back and remember my 20s as like probably the most important years of my life, not for fat loss or like, you know, high rocks or half marathons or that. It's just going to be like, right, I'm going to remember them as my most important years, because from 20 to 25, I went through like a 5-year period that can probably match most people's.
And that's why I asked you at the start, who is Connor? Because your what at one stage was your weight loss. Like you shared earlier on, your heaviest was 21 stone. And if you feel comfortable sharing, I won't put pressure on you. But what in total have you lost in weight, if you wouldn't mind sharing, if you feel comfortable doing that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if we're going through like, if we combine
from the start to now,
including like all the little mini fat loss phases as well.
Yeah.
You're probably talking about
roughly.
Different ones. No, I'm trying to calculate it. You're probably talking about 60 to 70 kilograms between like, so I went from like about 135 down to about 88, and then I went back up to about 98, and I got back down to 89 for the photo shoot last year, and I came back up, and then I'm come back down again. So yeah, you're probably talking about that 60 kilograms mark between different things.
So that's your what, and your who is that you've went from working at McDonald's, not really knowing probably what you were going to do, to becoming the coach. And as you said in your video last night when you did your launch, that you become coach, what to become an athlete, what to become an entrepreneur, having all this stuff, helping, like the example that you've given of your client, and really helping me, having this conversation with me, you know, spread that message that change is possible.
Mm-hmm.
We can have the what of, like, my what at one stage was my weight gain, just like your weight loss was your what. But the who that we have become is much more than that. And that, I think, that's why I asked you earlier on about, you know, are you proud of that person? Do you like that person from before? Is because even when we don't like them or whatever, we have feelings towards them depending on which day of the week it is. They've made a huge contribution to the 2025 versions that we've both become, and that I think that's a really powerful message in that.
Yeah, and that's why I think that, like, and this is not with a business hat on. This is not with like a coaching business hat on. Is like, I'm actually making a post about it tonight. I'm like, there is not one single person who could not in some way, shape, or form better their life by getting coaching. And it's not like this isn't like a marketing thing, but it's like, doesn't matter what you're at. Like, again, I'm going to make the post tonight. So I had like somebody that said to me this morning that they didn't see the point in coaching because they're already a PE teacher and they already go to the gym. And again, it's like people just have this mindset. And again, that's great that they go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's because they've already put themselves into this category of, I already go to the gym a few times a week. I'm fine with what I'm doing, because there's probably things that I could show them their potential of doing, but they won't believe that. But they're never going to realize that until they actually get the help. And I think like, yeah, I think the big takeaway from like all of it is like, you and I are both lucky that we've you know, spent, I don't know how long you've been with them. I've been with them for about a year and 5 months now, but
I have just celebrated my 3-year anniversary. But I played at mine for 2 years, and I can pull my hand up and say that.
I remember you speaking about that at the retreat and that. But yeah, I think it just shows the importance of, and again, I will absolutely hand on heart admit it, that I would not be I wouldn't be the coach that I am without I wouldn't be the coach that I am without them. And I think that what happens is, like, you know, it makes you a better coach as well, because it's like your experience as a coach, like what you've done before, will make you really, really adapt. And like you were saying there about situations like when, you know, you're getting people that are calling you, telling you, like, you know, we've lost somebody, but when you got other calls, like the social communication skills that you pick up as a coach, they filter into like everyday part of life. So it's like, you know, I know, like, people joke about it all the time, but if I'm having like a conversation with like a mate, just like we're out for a drink or that, and they may be like, you know, speaking about something, and like they say something that they maybe doubt themselves for, like, I can't not like go somewhat into coach. I physically can't do it. And like people might be like, oh, you try to go coach mode on me. I'll be like, yeah, I will. And again, that's like a running joke of like people will go, oh, don't go coach mode on me. And I'm like, but why would I not go coach mode on you if coach mode can help you?
It can maybe be the difference in that moment, and that's investing in yourself. I will tell anyone to invest in themselves, whatever way possible. And before I let you go, and I'm really curious about this question for you, always the same question I ask anyone that comes on the podcast. What do you feel are your superpowers?
My ability to be emotionally in the moment with anybody. As in, I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, as in I can be like, I am like, there's not like a topic of conversation that is like awkward for me. Like I'll talk about like I'll go on consultation calls with clients and I'll speak to females about like their insecurities, like having the lights on during sex. Like it doesn't really phase me. As in, I'm not going to like just randomly bring it up, but as in like there's no sort of thing that I'm like, oh, that's a bit like, off the mark of that.
Yeah.
If somebody like, if like there's a girl that's like chatting to me and she's like crying, like I've had clients like I've maybe cried with me in the gym and like I'm totally fine with that. Like, yeah, I would say that it was actually Ben that said it to me recently. It was like, my most mature skill is probably my emotional skill. Like I'm a big
I'd
hyper,
agree
like
with that.
I'm hyper. I like taking the piss in that I do, but I can be very emotionally mature, like when I need to. And I think it's why I've got a strong business, which is pretty much all females. Because, and again, it's not me saying that females are emotional, but I feel like there's a mix of sometimes that you don't get from an all-female coach with female clients.
Yeah,
Where
I would agree.
where I feel like, and again, there's going to be skills that the female coaches have that I don't, because they go through stuff that I don't. But there's my ability to know when people need. If I can sum it up in one way, I know when people need the cheerleader, I know when people need the coach, and I know when people just need like a friend.
And that's what a coach should be. That's what in my opinion, a good human being should be.
Yeah.
Because it's his common sense as much as having the coach's hat on. And I would definitely agree with that. Definitely agree with that. And before I let you go, just if anyone wants to follow you or stalk you, like me, where can they find you to do that, Connor?
They can find me on Instagram at connor.peak pursuit project. They can also get me on YouTube. I'm getting into my YouTube now.
I seen that, yeah.
Yeah, so just get me on Connor Armstrong on Facebook. And yeah, honestly, I would say that like if you follow me, you're gonna get some form of value, because I'm very what's the word? No filter.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
And if there's one little bit of advice that you could give anyone out there that might be about to start a journey, on a journey, or anything that you could say to them right now in this moment, what would you say?
Whatever you're doing, whether it's weight loss, weight gain, whatever you're doing, stop thinking about a year away and start thinking about 1%. Because if you manage to do something every day that pushes you 1% forward, then in a year you're going to be 365% better.
Can't say much more than that, Connor. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you.
No problem.